Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of The Awesome C.O.D.Y. As usual, I'm your host, C.O.D.Y, and today we are continuing September's theme of awesome new horror movies. So today we're talking about James Wan's Malignant. Right away, I'll tell you right now, it wasn't the most awesome of horror movies, and it wasn't as awesome as I was hoping it was going to be. So, kind of disappointing there. The story was pretty interesting. It was a very weird take on a killer movie, and not what I thought it was, because I literally thought it was like a possession thing or like a evil demon thing. It's not. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's definitely not that. So take that as much as you want, and you can watch it in theaters as well as on HBO Max for the people who have access to that. I think mainly in the United States, but also might be in other places besides there. But check it out if you get a chance or if you want to. It's there. It's on HBO Max for at least a month or so. I think it's like 31 or 30 something days, but you can check it out there if you really want. So yeah, who's in this movie? There's a handful of people. Nobody of note really was in this movie. Nobody I recognized right away. The main actress was in. She's in. Her big titles were Peaky Blinders for 6 years, I believe. Which I mean, I recognize her from, but it's not a standout. But she was in. She played Mia. In Annabelle, another James Wan flick, and then she was also in The Mummy from 2017 with Tom Cruise. And then she was in Showtime. I don't know if I said The Tudors or not in Showtime. That was like one of her bigger ones, or early ones. So yeah, she's been in a handful of things. She wasn't terrible in this movie, but she wasn't also really good in this movie. There were some parts where I was like, wow, she can fucking act, because I believe she's really in terror and pain. But otherwise, it was just a little not the best performance by her. The sister, who was played by Maddie Hassan, who is in I don't even know what shows. I didn't recognize. I thought she was someone else, and then I was mistaken when I looked her up. But she was in 4 episodes of the show Mr. Mercedes, which I've talked about here on this podcast before. She was in an episode of Grimm, something called. She was in the main role in The Finder, which I actually like a lot. And when I looked up who she was, I can't actually remember her role in that, but she was in that. Unfortunately, that show went under. It was actually a really good show. At least I thought it was a really good show. And so forth. So she plays the sister in Malignant. It goes by the name of Sydney, and she was actually really good. I haven't listened to anything about how it was made or what was the premise, or not the premise, the thought process behind a lot of things. To me, it felt like it was supposed to be a little on the not great side, like almost campy in a way. I don't know how to explain it the best way with words, which is terrible because it's an audio podcast where I talk. It just seemed like less worried about realism and more about fantastical horror, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. It had a lot of throwback stuff, like some people would say cliches, but they weren't. Well, some of them were cliches. Not all of them were cliches, or at least some of them weren't nearly as bad as normal cliches would be. But the acting's what really got me. It wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be. I'm not even going to go through the rest of the cast. There's a bunch of people in it. Nobody I really cared about. So, take that as much as you want. So the thing about this movie, there's a couple weird things. Like I said, the acting and some of the delivery of lines were not the best in the world. But, I'm not an acting coach or anything like that, so I can't really tell you if they're doing good or bad or whatever. But just think about what it is that you are going in to watch, either in the theater or at home, and just know that it's more about the story than it is about the acting, because the acting is, I'm not going to say piss poor, but it wasn't great. You could definitely have gotten better performances, I think. And if these were the better ones that you got, well, didn't do the best casting, I would almost say. But, that's to each their own, and I'm not going to be here to disparage anybody's talents, but it just didn't have their performances, I think, that were needed, were not there anyhow. So I'm not going to spoil the story. I think you should check it out and see it for yourselves. The visual effects, there was a cool, couple cool scenes. The thought process behind it was pretty good, but you could see kind of where they couldn't execute their plan fully on some of the ideas. So, there's that too, and it wasn't the coolest thing ever. But gore factor is pretty high, especially the last half of the movie. Death scenes weren't really that drastic. So, not really looking at this as like, oh my god, I can't believe how violent this is. It's pretty violent, but it's not like gore porn, fucking Hostel 2 kind of level of disgusting. Or even that of like Candyman was actually more gory than this was. There was one scene that was pretty rough, and it was kind of surprising after the first death. The second death was like, okay. And in the beginning of the movie, there's quite a bit of violence, and there's some on-screen gore. Dude's compound fracture of his arm, for example. It's pretty gnarly looking. But the second full-on death in the movie was pretty... Or third, sorry. Well, the husband's was pretty bad, too. Spoiler. But, yeah, so I guess the third death. So the husband, the doctor, and the other doctor. It's the second doctor to go. Was pretty wild to watch. But I think that's it. I don't have a lot to say about this movie because my feelings are sort of mixed on it. I enjoyed it, but also I don't think it was very good. I don't know why. It's so hard for me to think about exactly what my thoughts are on it. There's some cool things about it, like the story was a nifty little idea. I think the execution with the acting and some of the line delivery was probably what turned me off the most about it, because it was a little rough around the edges on a lot of it, but, whatever. So, yeah, short and sweet on this week's episode, because I didn't have a lot of glowing things to say about this movie, and I'm trying not to talk mad trash about it, because it wasn't like it was the worst piece of shit in the world. It's just... The trailer left me wanting more than what I got from the movie, which is, what the trailers are designed for. They're not completely designed for, but trailers are supposed to suck you in, and then James Wan has a pretty good track record. This just happens to be one of the ones we fall short on. So, not the best, but if you get a chance to check it out and you want to give it a shot, go ahead. It's on, like I said, in theaters now, on HBO Max and wherever countries get it right now. But check it out if you want. If you're a fan of horror, give it a shot. Check it out. It's not a terrible movie. It's just not a great movie, and it's not as awesome as I was hoping it to be. So, yeah, that's about it for this week's episode of The Awesome Cody. I have been your host, Cody, and like I always say at the end of these episodes, let's be awesome.